welcome. Hello, welcome. Hi everyone, welcome to Cherry Chat. I'm your host, Meg. I have the pleasure of talking to the multi-talented Alicia Debnem-Keri today. Alicia stars in the new Hulu series Sent-Икс, which you can check out on Wednesdays on Hulu or Tuesdays at 9 p.m. depending on your location. I'm super excited to chat with Alicia today. Oh, there's lots of you here. Love to see it. Poland? My goodness. Denmark? Hello. Czech Republic? Wow. Belgium, England? My goodness. Venezuela? Turkey? This is a global Cherry Chat today, and I'm loving it. Let's see. Germany? Oh my gosh. Worldwide Cherry Chat. We love it. Ecuador, another Italy. My gosh. All right, let's see. I have not met her. This is the first time I'll be interviewing her, so I'm super excited because I'm such a huge fan. It's always such a treat for me when I get to talk to someone who I really admire and I'm a fan of. I mean, what's better than that? Yes, the love is worldwide. Okay, let me see. I got her. Okay, Alicia. Sometimes I'm just like chatting away. Oh my gosh. Let's see. Hello. Yes. Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh my gosh, the love that you've been getting.
Oh.
It's so beautiful to see. Like everyone from around the world is watching you and just loving you. I mean, the joy, it's just beautiful.
This is so exciting. This is my first Instagram live, so I'm like very new to it. It's like my first time seeing all this. I'm seeing everyone's comments. This is so fun.
Oh my gosh. Yay, I'm so happy to be your first. And this is my favorite thing to do. It's really weird because when you hear like live, it feels a little daunting, but honestly, like it feels so intimate. Like it's just me and you, like we're just chatting.
I think that's why I was a little like daunted by it. I was like, oh, like all these people are alive, except I'm not seeing anyone. And it's just, so it's kind of a wig out, but it's cool. I'm excited.
Yeah, no, I mean, the love is just outpouring and like I said, global, and it's just so cool. Well, it's lovely to meet you. Everyone was asking, they're like, is this your first time like meeting her? I'm like, yes, I'm such a huge fan, so this is such a treat for me.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to do this. This is great.
Oh my gosh, what a love fest. Well, I know before we get into Sent-Икс, which by the way, everyone has been loving, especially there's been a lot of comments about how just incredible this week's episode was. It was a big powerhouse episode, so we'll get to that in a minute. But I want to take it way back for a second. I want to take it way back. I know you've been performing forever, since you were a kid. You're so multi-talented, acting, singing, but do you remember, this may be tricky, but do you remember the first time you really fell in love with storytelling, or like that aha moment of the impact that it can truly make?
I definitely remember specifically the moment that happened really clearly. I was 8 years old and I did a film, and it was called Martha's New Coat, and it was like just sort of, I don't know, it was an aha moment where I was suddenly surrounded by all these creative people, and I realized you could do this, and everyone wanted to collaborate, and it was playful, and there were just like costumes and makeup and different locations every day, and every day was different, and it was so exciting. And I think before that I'd always been a very creative kid. Like I'd always, you know, I was the typical like forcing my siblings and like family to like do plays with me in the backyard and perform them for our parents. Like I was very much like driven in that direction. And I, even with you, like costumes, and I was always like playing dress ups. It was just that very like, you know, obnoxious sort of attention seeking kid. But I think it was when I was 8, I suddenly was in this film, and it was the first time I really understood it as like almost like its own little microcosm, its own world, because it wasn't just that it was sure there was a part of it that was like, oh, this is a job that like people do for real, but it was also like, this is kind of, I don't know, all those pieces together, but on a larger scale. It just was this, I was seeing it all put together in real time, and it was like the grown-ups version of kind of what I'd been playing, you know, since I was a kid. So I just, yeah, like fell in love with it there. And I remember like I had a journal that I wrote, and I'd like taken like, I don't know, 3 weeks off school or something, and I came back and I was so just like, I've had like a life-changing eight. I was like, you know, like I just like understand the world differently, and like but it changed my entire perspective. I was just like, you know, I was treated like an adult as well, but it was like allowed to be in this creative space, but it was elevated, and it was very special for me.
That sounds so lovely. What a gift. And I mean, it sounds too like you gained this whole new perspective that just like opened your world up. And I think we're so impressionable at that age. And I think then to like be able to, like you said, that combination of like, this is a job, but this is also a dream come true. And this is fun, but it's also, I have to take it seriously, and just what an experience.
It was incredible. Very lucky experience too, to have at such a young age, to be able to like play on, like it's like a circus. It was like the circus came to town, you know? And I was like, whoa, the world just opened up. Suddenly it was in like hypercolor. Yeah,
I love that. Well, speaking of collaboration, I mean, Saint X, you have so many incredible, I mean, specifically, like we have to give a shout out to like, you know, the women in the industry, because at the end of the day, this platform is all about, you know, supporting and uplifting women and non-binary folks in this kind of crazy industry.
By the way, absolutely love that this is a space that shines a light on that and like highlights all these extraordinary women, and it's special.
Yeah. You gotta keep doing it. I mean, like it's like there's so much work to be done still, and appreciating, I think, what you were saying earlier about that what you got to kind of see and experience when you were 8 is like all the different facets of what goes into creating a story, and from the writers to the director to the producers, and you got to collaborate with some incredible women on this series. What did that mean to you, and what was that experience like?
It's so important, and something that I think over the last couple of years especially that I've taken significant more interest in, but also so much more aware of. I think I actually attribute it to working on Fear the Walking Dead for a really long time, you know, because that was a lucky experience that I was able to work on a consistent show for like 6-7 years and see how it was changing in real time. And I think, you know, there is often, to your point of like, there is a long way to go. I remember thinking like, okay, we're moving forward in a direction of like, there are a bit maybe more female writers being represented, or like directors, or but for me, when I realized how little there were behind the scenes, that was a really big realization for me. And then over the years, seeing how that's been implemented a little bit more, and I'm always thinking like, that's one thing that I kind of want people to know, especially in the industry, if you're like looking to get into the industry. There are all these other positions that we want female like representation in. Like there's, you know, so many different facets. I think there's a typical, you know, we kind of have this idea of like, oh, hair or makeup or costumes, but so many other incredibly important things like sound mixing and a camera, and like there's lighting, like there's just so many other areas that I just don't think we're even really privy to as women. And I think that was something, and I was like enjoying to see like that being occupied a little bit more. Specifically, I mean, Dee Reese obviously did our, so she's extraordinary, just such a visionary, has such like an auteur perspective, and I think really set this whole, you know, the look and the tone of what the show is, and it's really important to have her, you know, on board, and especially in spearheading what this looked like, and also to have Lila as the, you know, that was just, having a female showrunner is really exciting, and yeah, it was, there are so many important roles for females to have, then like this is storytelling, and there are so many platforms for that, and I'm glad we're seeing in some ways like the more known positions, but I feel like it's great for people to know that also all this, you know, it takes a village to make a TV show, a film. It's not easy, you know. We was on our, like, you know, binge it. In reality, this is like hundreds of people working together to make it happen. There are all these positions for people. So yeah, I think very lucky.
No,
a lot more of that happening.
Oh, absolutely. And I always say too, it's like, you know, if you watch a movie or, you know, a TV show and you loved it so much, you know, obviously like you're gonna kind of remember and keep track of the people, of the actors that you fall in love with on screen, but pay attention to the credits, see who directed it, see who edited it, see who shot it, see who wrote it, and start following them as well.
Yes.
You know, and I think that this is this show is a perfect example of that. But okay, we got to get into this week's episode because Alicia, your performance was stunning. It was so, you beautifully captured this societal pressure, I think, that's put on people to return to normalcy.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, you know, that, and, you know, and how important that is to see on screen, because it's extremely relatable.
We definitely had, you know, we talked about how this was not a neat portrait of a woman dealing with mental health. This was a very kind of messy and quite relatable and a more realistic version of this, which is, you know, I think especially with, you know, TV narrative and the way that we consume media so much now, it's like very, you want it to feel very like tied up in a bow and like it's nice, and what I really liked about this was that it was complicated and it was, and that just because, you know, there are so many levels and layers to someone trying to heal and grapple with trauma, and it's not something that just disappears. It's something that someone has to like live with and develop tools and ways that they can cope. And I liked that this was a representation of someone that it didn't feel so easy. Not in life.
No.
Like, it's not. I think everyone understands that feeling of just like, you know, I took one step forward and then suddenly 2 steps back. And life is kind of this ebb and flow and this flux of healing and growing and changing, and the pressures that we put on ourselves, the societal pressures, as you were saying too. So I kind of, I don't know, my hope was with this character and for people watching it was that it didn't feel easily digestible, and that it feel like a character that sometimes you were like, you know, you understood where she was coming from, you understood like maybe where her motives were, but that they were still sort of at sometimes like, you know, hard to get on board with and like difficult and at times unlikable. You know, I think I find a lot of joy in characters that are a bit messy at the edges and a little frayed and have these kind of unhinged moments, because we all live in those places sometimes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so true. That was so beautifully said. I mean, I think this is why messiness is beautiful, right? I mean, it's like, it's what gives us life. It's what makes us human. And I think that, you know, whether we consciously or unconsciously do this, we take from what we see, and we learn from what we see. And if we don't see the messiness, then we don't accept the messiness within ourselves. And especially when it comes to grieving and trauma, these are not linear things, and they sneak up on you when you least expect it, and you don't know necessarily what's going to trigger trauma. And it's so important. And I think too, the fact that it's very smart. I mean, this is just good writing, writers. It's very smart that also Emily's a, documentarian. So she's innately curious. She's innately seeking the truth. She's a truth seeker. And then for that to combat with her sort of going through her own mental health journey and trauma and grief, it's just really powerful. And it allows for this like lens, this like really cool lens to kind of discover all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just, it gets even more so. Like, I think my episodes are, I'd say like 6, 7, 8 really do. Like, and really was like attracted to this, this story purely because it was this very unique psychological downward spiral of someone, and that it isn't linear, as you said. It is sort of all over the place. And I also like to think this is a person who is sort of two fractured parts of a personality. This was a child that dealt with like trauma that sort of then paralyzed her in her development in so many ways, and then had to fill a void as a sister in a family that had this sort of this vacuum, and so she's sort of become two different personalities. And I think this was for me a journey to marry them back, and the truth of her trying to figure out what's going on. It's also this sort of truth to figure out who she is. Those two parts of herself were to kind of come back together, I think.
Yeah, and I think that it's also like really powerfully shown too through her relationships, and like with the relationship with her parents, with her coworkers, with her boyfriend, with all these relationships where that line of like when he was saying in this episode, I miss you. Was it I miss you? Yeah. And it's like right there, but it's like clearly like how it's like that. Oh, it's like he didn't mean, it's not like meant to be a hurtful thing. It's meant to be a loving sentiment, but it's hurtful.
It is. And it's like, I think he says like, I miss you. Like, like come back to me soon.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying, like I am trying. And this is not just something I can just turn on and it's fixed. It's an interesting portrait of trauma. And I like that dynamic between the boyfriend and her too, because it is also, and that gets even more.
Oh, I can tell. I feel like we kind of saw that coming. We're like seeing that coming a little bit. Yeah.
It just feels very,
It's very truthful. It's very truthful. And I think that, and that's also a testament to your performance. I think that you, it's a role that requires an immense amount of vulnerability, but also she's got her guard up. It's like that sweet spot, and you just play it so well. You're kind of channeling both the vulnerability and also the shell, and that's where the magic happens.
Well, I'm so glad you think so.
I do.
I was sometimes like getting that mix properly.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Can you give us, without a spoiler, I know this is so hard, and can you give us like a word or a vibe that like best describes the upcoming episode? It's hard, but it's like, everyone gets so like, anxious. They just need
to. I'll say 6 and 7 were my favorite episodes to shoot. I believe that's what's coming. 6 is coming next, I think. 5
or 7.
Or is it?
I'm gonna look it up.
7's?
Look it up just so we. I like binged it, so I'm like, I can tell you where we left off. She went to, hold on, let's see. I'm gonna make sure we can't get anyone angry at us. Okay.
Well, that's why I'll just be like 6 and 7.
6 is coming up. You're right. You're absolutely right.
I thought, okay. I think these 2 episodes we really tandem, and they operate a lot more in that kind of lightning in a bottle space. Really just about to, like, the lid's about to blow off. And I think if, you know, you've been waiting to see sort of like where it all starts to come loose, and watching a character that's really just sort of holding on, and it's getting worse, and you know, she's lying more, and but the truth is sort of starting to reveal itself. This is where you see, I guess, what this character chooses to do under immense amount of pressure, and in that kind of like messiness that we were discussing earlier, that if it's it was my favorite episodes to shoot because it just felt like the most raw. So I think if people are wanting to see where a character kind of like slips and falls before it gets better, like they're really interesting, powerful episodes that
wow. Oh, I look forward to that. I have chills. I'm like, woo! I could just like, I mean, that makes so much sense. I think where we left it off with episode 5, it's like you can tell it's like there's a kind of a fork in the road a little bit, and things are gonna get, like you said, messy and raw before
it gets better. And you know, this sort of we talked a lot about, I think, in these upcoming episodes as well, this idea of, you know, without sounding too like woo woo about it, but I mean, which I totally subscribe to anyway, but there's this sort of, you know, when people have a shared trauma, which these characters do, we talked a lot about this push and pull of the thread of existence, and this sort of serendipity and coincidence, and this loop, this sort of constant Ouroboros, you know, that kind of that snake eating itself, this sort of fulfilling prophecy. We sort of talked a lot about that in this episode, and this sort of need to seek out things that are almost sometimes harmful to us, and this desire to lean into those signals and messages and coincidences and thought processes. It was, we kind of wanted to make it feel uncomfortable in that a bit more like energetic cosmic space. That sounds a little...
Oh no, that's very cool. I totally get that. And I think too, I was thinking about this recently, like also with the you know, Emily is feeling very, I think, isolated also, and when that happens, she has people in her life that love her, and I think she knows that. I don't think she feels unloved. She feels that, but to your point, when there's someone who has experienced the same trauma as you, to feel sort of, to seek out that feeling seen and feeling that connection, even though it can be really harmful, it's such a human reaction when we're feeling so isolated.
Yes. And that kind of, that idea of like, I mean, I'm having to sort of thought that kind of, the taxi driver being the therapist, or someone who's almost so removed, and I think she can hide behind this, you know, this performance and this shell of someone else. Her actual true self to this man who does know her sort of better than a lot of, in a very different way, but like, you know, when you flash back to her and Gogo then at the resort, like, very kind person. And so for her to try and wrap her head around this and to be like, how can I be myself, this sort of young, naive, childlike personality with this, but still have then this shared trauma that I think he's imposed upon, you know, upon her. It's it's just so unique. And yeah, I mean, Josh and Josh Bonzi, who plays Clive, is just extraordinary and so just stunningly. And he's also just happened to be the loveliest human beings, like genuinely gorgeous. And I think just the two of us really did. We agreed that because of that isolation and that loneliness that the two of them share too, like it brings them together and it makes it that sort of like, it's almost like I want to say almost like not a catch-22, but like the two of them are able to talk to each other, not knowing that while they're hiding behind a mask, they're actually the truth.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, this is why this show is so fantastic. It's like the complexities of all of this. It just makes it so intriguing and fascinating. And like we said before, relatable. It's like the rawness allows it to be relatable. And that's like, to me, the best kind of storytelling. Well, I know I can't keep you forever, even though I could talk to you forever.
I'm like, it took me a second to be like I was looking at some of the comments. I was like, well, this is like really like, confusing. But then I was like, oh my God, now we're just having like a full chat. I loved it.
Exactly. That's what I love. It's like, it weirdly becomes so intimate, which is like so wild to me.
I understand why people are into these.
Yeah.
Because it feels very accessible and intimate. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just like two people chatting. Even though a lot of folks are watching, there's so much love. Well, before I let you go, again, all about supporting each other, uplifting each other. I'm so sorry. I know this is such a tough question, and I know that you have so much incredible work in the pipeline, but who's currently really inspiring you right now? Who do you want to collaborate with next? I'm sure there's a long list, but.
Gosh, I know. Oh, wow. Okay.
You can manifest.
Wow. The one that's coming to mind right now, honestly, it's because I was very lucky enough to attend the Chanel cruise show the other day. Sophia Coppola was in front of me. And I mean, she's just like one of my top like directors and kind of has been one of my like biggest inspirations since I was a kid too, because I think it was the I really saw, like, I adored Lost in Translation. I love Marie Antoinette, even though it story-wise was a little, but it was like delightful, and I thought I love her like freshness, and I love her take. So I was suddenly like, I've got to manifest this. Like, I've got to manifest like working with her in some capacity. But I don't know. There's so many great people I want to work with. There's so many like great women I want to work with too. I feel like I'm on the spot and I can't think of any.
No, but that was wonderful. Like, Sophia, I mean, that's what totally makes sense. I feel like the two of you would be sort of this like little match made in heaven. And I agree. Like, she has, even from the beginning, she had such a distinct voice that felt so unique at the time and continues to feel, like you said, fresh and new. And like, what a freaking force to be able to kind of continue surprising and delighting us, and diving into kind of the unknown and not being afraid to try things that may not be necessarily like, I don't know. I mean, like, she's literally created a new genre almost.
Yeah. And you know what I loved as well? I think what made me so like attracted to her style, her approach, especially as that it was the first version I really saw of someone that didn't have to hide a femininity in such this sort of, even the way she operates on set, the way she conducts herself, the way she like wears clothing. To me, that was also really inspiring, because I'm quite a like, I love clothes, I love fashion, I love like dressing up, like it's a really big part of my personality. And I suddenly was seeing someone that also was celebrating that too in her own, and I just felt like that wasn't something I saw very often. To me, it was like, hey, you can be both.
Yeah.
You can be both. You don't necessarily have to, because, you know, directing, for example, is such a male-dominated industry. Like, we're getting, but it is so heavily male-dominated that to see then sometimes it feels like you have to, like, fit in to.
Yeah. Yes.
And it just seemed like she was one of those people that I was like, oh, you don't subscribe to that.
No.
And I still love it.
True. That's so true, especially the time that she like came up.
Yes. Young
and
too.
did not subscribe to that, and she was just unapologetically her. And you're right, she made, you know, femininity like not a weakness,
Not a
which we had seen up until that point. I mean, it is really. I also think of like Greta Gerwig, who does that too, where feel like
that's it. Oh my God! I thank God you said. I was gonna.
Isn't that funny how that happens? Where it's like on the tip of your brain, tip of your tongue.
It was almost as well because I feel like this question came up recently, and I felt like I had the same thing where I was like, you know, sometimes like when someone asks like, "What's your favorite movie?" and you're like, "God."
You're like, don't put me on the spot.
Oh, but this kind of similar question came up, and I remember thinking later, I was like, Greta Gerwig, like obviously, 100%, like, and talk about someone as well who's like, I found out that, you know, she also like in the way she directs is very embracive of her settings and her, like, did you see that? She,
yes, that's what I was thinking of when you were talking about Sophia dressing.
Yes,
you know,
like all her in the Barbie movie, she's like wearing all pink and it's all like cottagecore.
I love it.
I love it too, and I just thought, and just to watch her, I don't know, I've watched some of the behind the scenes of her directing too, and it's so vulnerable and embracive and quite like sweet, and I love
sweet.
Not this sort of
it's like safe. It feels safe, and I mean, like I feel like you're referring, because like this is what comes to mind when you say that it's like when she's like tender as a director. That have you seen that clip of like Saoirse and Lucas? Yes. And I think that totally encapsulates like her as a director, and like she really is there to play. And that's a wonderful full circle moment of like what you were saying about your experience when you were 8, how you were like, this is professional, but I also get to play. And why can't we have both? There's no need to be, you know, this sad, stupid notion that film sets have to be rigid and hard and, you know, cruel.
And
I feel like
reminded me too that first movie was directed by Lord, and I think that now I'm sort of putting the pieces together. I think there's a big link why female directors inherently inspire quite a lot, and it's something, you know, I've got a lot of interest in. I've directed an episode of Fear the Walking Dead myself, which was amazing, and something I'm interested in pursuing too. So I think it's interesting that it all comes back to those being my inspiration.
I mean, I love actor directors.
Yes.
I think that there's something really, not that directors on their own are not gorgeous, talented humans, but I think there's something to be said about these multi-hyphenate artists that are really special and we're seeing more of, because why not? Why not?
Why not? Exactly. More.
Well, I can't wait to see like I can't wait for your feature film, but I can't wait to see what you wear during the
like a spreadsheet look for everyone.
Here's my Pinterest of my outfits. I love it so much. Well, you were such a gem. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was a blast.
Thank you. I had such a good time.
Oh my gosh, that means the world to me. And oh my gosh, Saint-Икс, new episodes Tuesdays or Wednesdays, depending on your coast. For me, I think it's Tuesdays at 9 p.m., but Wednesdays at midnight. But it's such an excellent show. Congratulations and everything. And thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This was lovely.
Much love.
Bye.
Bye.
And thanks, everyone.